I never imagined being fired for my integrity, the agony of losing everything for safety. I will never forget the day everything fell apart. It started as a normal Tuesday morning. I woke up to the piercing ring of my phone, its shrill tone cutting through the silence of my empty apartment. As I rubbed sleep from my eyes, I felt an unsettling knot in my stomach. Something wasn't right. I could sense it in the air, heavy and thick with dread. That day, my boss called me into his office. My hands trembled as I walked down the corridor. The fluorescent lights hummed ominously above me. I could smell the stale coffee and feel the anxiety radiating off my colleagues. They whispered behind their desks, their eyes darting toward me. I could hear their murmurs, laced with both concern and curiosity. When I stepped inside the office, my heart raced against my ribs. My boss sat behind a massive oak desk, his face a mask of seriousness. I noticed his fingers tapping nervously against the polished wood. The air felt electric as he cleared his throat, the tension almost suffocating. Then he dropped the bombshell. I had to choose, my job or my integrity. He whispered of company policy and liabilities like they were demons hiding in the shadows that I couldn't breathe. Every word felt like a slap. How could I betray everything I believed in? I had always stood up for what was right. I thought that the truth matters. Tears threatened to spill over as I imagined my family, my aging mother, my little brother with dreams bigger than our worn-out apartment. I knew I had to protect them. But at what cost? The damage of that single moment shattered everything. The whispers I had heard in the hallway grew louder inside me. I felt adrift, like a ship lost in a storm with no hope of returning home. I walked out of that office, a sense of betrayal heavy on my shoulders. Days passed, and I watched as my world crumbled. My dreams of a stable future slipping through my fingers like grains of sand. I endured stares that felt like hot coals on my skin. My friends turned away, scared to associate with someone who had been let go. Each silent moment was a reminder of my failures, my choices that had cost me everything. And then came the night when it got worse. I received an anonymous message, a chilling text that read, "You don't even know what's coming, do you?" My heart pounded in my chest. Fear twisted my insides. Who sent this? Why? I looked around my dimly lit room, feeling the shadows closing in on me. Could I trust anyone? I was on the brink. I didn't know how much more I could take. My desperation clawed at me. My chest felt tight, each heartbeat echoing the question, was losing my job truly the worst of it? Hey, before we continue with this amazing story, I need to give you an important heads up. Many subscribers have reported that YouTube unsubscribed them without warning. Take a quick second to check the red button below to make sure you're still subscribed to the channel. I'd hate for you to miss any of the exclusive content coming soon. And while you're there, smash that like button, it really helps me out with the algorithm. Oh, and tell me in the comments, which city are you watching from? I love getting to know every amazing person who's part of this community. Your participation makes all the difference. Let's connect. The following morning dawned like a haunting specter, the light filtering through my curtains with the same muted quality as my spirit. I sat on the edge of my bed, the day's dread folding over me like a heavy blanket. I had lost my job, yes, but the anonymous threat weighed even more heavily. It felt as if the darkness from the message had seeped into my blood, tainting everything around me. That I decided to take a walk, hoping the fresh air might clear my mind, even if just for a moment. A nearby park had always been a solace, the lush greenery teasing a sense of tranquility amid the chaos. But today, as I strolled through the pathways, I felt invisible, a ghost wandering through memories of laughter and friendship. The vibrant rustle of leaves and distant laughter filled the air, yet I remained anchored in solitude. As I took a seat on an aging wooden bench, I noticed an older woman feeding the pigeons not far from me. Her eyes gleamed with warmth, an inviting glow that drew me in. I felt a strange pull, an urge to connect, even when my heart was heavy. Mustering some courage, I approached her. "Do you mind if I sit?" I asked, my voice barely above a whisper. She looked up, surprise flitting across her face, quickly giving way to a kind smile. Of course, dear, she replied, her voice as soft as a feather falling. I'm married. That I found myself opening up, the words spilling out before I could stop them. I just lost my job and I feel so lost. I thought I was doing the right thing, but it cost me everything. Now, there's this message I received. My voice wavered, and I clamped my mouth shut, embarrassment flooding my cheeks. Mary listened attentively, her gaze unwavering and compassionate. Sometimes doing the right thing means standing alone, she said gently. But that doesn't mean you're truly alone. You have to hold on to hope. It often blooms in the unlikeliest of places. Her words wrapped around me like a warm embrace, stirring some lingering fragments of courage within. What if everything falls apart? I asked, my voice trembling. She leaned closer, her eyes twinkling with determination. Then you create something new from the pieces. I've had my share of losses, and let me tell you, dear, they can be the beginnings of something even better. I smiled faintly, momentarily distracted from my turmoil. But a gnawing fear still clung to my heart, the ominous message echoing insidiously in the back of my mind. As our conversation drifted to lighter subjects, the joys of summer, the thrill of traveling, an unexpected sense of camaraderie washed over me. As I walked back to my apartment, I pondered her words. What if I could reshape the fragments of my life? But the thought was immediately clouded with doubt. I unlocked my door, and as I stepped inside, a rush of unease flooded me. That's when I saw it, the envelope. Plain and unassuming, lying on my kitchen table. My heart raced as I approached, scanning the room for any sign of intrusion. With trembling hands, I picked it up, recognizing the familiar handwriting, worn yet precise as that of my former colleague, Jenna. I ripped it open, my heart pounding in my ears as the contents spilled out onto the table. Inside was a note, but not just any note. Detailed information that sent chills down my spine. It revealed not only the insidious practices at the company but hinted at alliances I never knew existed, dark secrets that could implode careers, including my own. And beneath it all, one sentence stood out like an alarm: they know you're still a threat. That I dropped the letter as if it had burned me. Fear clawed at my throat, rendering me speechless. Suddenly, the weight of the decision I had made loomed larger than ever. My fleeting hope teetered on the brink of something deeper and darker. With trembling hands, I reached for my phone, dialing Jenna's number. This could be my lifeline, or it could just bury me deeper. Before the first ring ended, I could hear her voice, smooth yet laced with an urgency I had never noticed before. What did you find out? She asked. The tension crackled through the line. Suffocating yet electric. And with that question, my world spun further into chaos, the lines of courage and danger blurring impossibly together. I felt an echo of hope flicker faintly in the depths of despair, but I couldn't help asking myself, would I have the strength to fight again, or had I lost everything for good? As the line remained taut, I could hear the rapid beating of my heart in my ears, drowning out everything else. Jenna, I finally managed to say, my voice barely a whisper. I got your letter. What do you mean they know I'm still a threat? There was a pause, a chilling silence, before she spoke again. I knew they wouldn't take your firing lightly. You stood up for what was right, and that makes you dangerous to them. You need to be careful. Her warning wrapped around me like icy fingers, freezing the hope I had just begun to cling to. Careful how? My breath quickened, and I struggled to steady myself against the kitchen counter. They're watching you, watching everyone, she replied, her tone heavy with unspoken dread. There's a deeper game being played, and you have a role in it whether you like it or not. You're not safe, and there are allies within the company that may step in, but you need to be discreet. Trust no one, not even those who seem helpful. Are you sure? My stomach knotted at the thought of potential betrayal, but something in her voice urged me to listen. I've seen things that no one should have, she said, her breath shaky. I'll reach out again soon, but please, be aware they might think you're coming after them. You need to lay low for now. Her words clouded my mind with despair. Everything felt fragile, like glass poised to shatter at any moment. The world outside my window seemed to continue unabated, filled with laughter and light, but I was trapped in this suffocating fog of anxiety and uncertainty that I ended the call, my fingers trembling as I placed the phone down. The letter lay discarded on the table, its revelations embedding deeper into my psyche. "You're still a threat." The words became a mantra, spinning around me as I tried to push down the panic threatening to rise that I needed a plan, something to keep me from drowning. But where to start? That sense of camaraderie with Mary, the warmth of her words, danced in my mind, a quiet ember in the stifling darkness. Maybe I could confide in her, find some wisdom amidst the storm swirling around me. But another part of me argued, was that safe? What if someone was watching? The sun dipped lower in the sky, bathing my apartment in shadows, and my spirits fell with it. I got up to pace, my thoughts racing until desperation began gnawing at my sanity. And somewhere amidst that chaos, the memory of Mary's kind smile beckoned me. Perhaps this was the small moment of hope I needed, a beacon piercing through the dense fog. Was it foolish to seek solace in a stranger? I couldn't shake the feeling that I had little to lose. I fumbled to write a quick note, thanking her again for her kindness before asking to meet if she felt comfortable. A lengthy text would have given me away, but with a simple note, I could remain inconspicuous. With shaking hands, I fashioned the note and flipped it into a small envelope. With a flicker of purpose igniting my heart, I found my jacket and slipped out the door, hoping to catch Mary before the darkness completely enveloped the park. The evening air welcomed me with a slight chill, nudging me back towards the paths that had felt so comforting earlier, but now seemed laced with uncertainty. As I arrived, I spotted her still on the bench, a flicker of relief washing over me. When I approached, she looked up, surprise in her eyes. "Oh, dear. What a lovely surprise." Her voice was as soothing as I remembered, and I couldn't help but smile despite the turmoil swirling in my gut. "Mary, I wanted to thank you again for talking with me yesterday. Your words meant a lot," I stammered, my heart hammering. She motioned for me to sit, her warmth dismantling my cautious demeanor. "I'm glad you came back. There's something comforting about sharing burdens, don't you think?" "Yes," I replied, the urge to share bubbling to the surface. "But there's something more. I wanted to ask you something that's been weighing on me." I hesitated, searching for the right words even as my pulse quickened. Mary regarded me, her expression softening into concern. "You seem troubled." "Sweetheart. You can tell me anything." I nodded, wrestling with the growing fear that threatened to spill from my lips. Just as I was about to speak, a shadow loomed near the entrance to the park, a figure dressed in black, jagged corners hidden in the dusk. The hair on the back of my neck prickled as I felt the eyes of the stranger bore into me. I paused mid-sentence, the urgency of the moment pressing heavily in the air. Mary's gaze followed mine, her eyes narrowing with a mix of curiosity and caution. I could feel the threads of my courage unraveling as the stranger shifted slightly, and then turned away, disappearing into the encroaching shadows, but my heart raced, and an unsettling chill enveloped me, a dreadful premonition unfurling inside, whispering that this wasn't just a momentary encounter. The words I had almost shared slipped away like sand through my fingers. Once again, the weight of uncertainty clung to me, pulling me back into solitude. I turned my gaze back to Mary, who now watched me with a newfound intensity. "What is it, dear? You can trust me." But I couldn't find the words, not while the fear of unseen threats loomed like a dark cloud over the park, a cold wind whispering that this was only the beginning of a deeper and darker chaos. As I remained silent, the sensation of the night growing darker enveloped us both, the promise of hope flickering precariously amidst the overwhelming shadows. A heaviness filled the air between us, woven together by unspoken fears and the weight of reality pressing down like an unyielding storm. I swallowed hard, searching Mary's face for reassurance, something to ground me in this torrent of confusion. The stranger was gone, but the anxiety remained, coiling around me like a serpent ready to strike. "Mary," I finally whispered, "what if I'm being watched?" My voice carried a tremor that betrayed my composure. The thought of sharing my truth now felt like inviting danger to our small sanctuary. Her brow furrowed, concern etched deeply into her features. Watched? By whom? She pressed gently, her instinct to soothe battling against the gravity of my admission. I don't know, I stammered, fingers tracing the outline of the envelope in my pocket. Should I share the contents of my call with Jenna? The details were drenched in fear, and despite my growing trust in Mary, I hesitated. People I used to work with, they said I was a threat. I don't know what they want. Maybe to silence me. To make an example, a shudder rolled through me as I recalled Jenna's warning. Mary reached over, her hand warm and steady on mine. In that moment, it felt as if her kindness could shield me against the encroaching darkness, if only briefly. Sometimes we have to show our vulnerability to find strength, she said softly, her eyes searching mine. But you must also protect yourself. We never know who is truly on our side, her words resonated deep within me. I remembered the shadows and the furtive glances among former colleagues, whispers exchanged behind closed doors. The betrayal lingered like an acrid smoke in my lungs, and I grew restless, mind racing toward thoughts of escape, of safety, or was it isolation? What if I don't have anyone to trust? The words broke free, raw, and desperate. I could feel the thread of hope pulling away, unraveling at my fingertips as the world around us dimmed further. Mary's grip tightened, a tether in the swirl of my doubts. You have me, she said solemnly. But you also need to tread with care. There are ways to protect yourself. Information can be a weapon. Information? I echoed, the concept feeling foreign and complex. Knowledge is power. If you have understanding of what they are doing, you can stand stronger against it. Her eyes shimmered with determination, and a spark illuminated the darkness. The urge to recount everything surged within me, but as I peeled back the layers of my chaotic thoughts, I felt a sudden pang of hesitation. Was I ready to share the entirety of my fears, or would it make me vulnerable in a way that would draw the very danger I sought to escape? Just then, the sound of hurried footsteps gathered in the distance, moments before a voice broke through the silence. Mary! There you are! My heart plummeted as I recognized the Nakamura neighbor from our building, Tom. His face beamed, but there was an edge to it, a frantic energy that seemed out of place. Tom, Mary commenced, her tone laced with surprise, as I caught the brief flicker of concern crossed her features. What brings you here? I needed to talk to you, he interrupted, his eyes sweeping the park before landing on me. It's important. I overheard some things going on around the office that I held my breath, the thudding of my heart growing louder in my ears. Tom's presence threw me off kilter. If he had overheard something, would it alter everything? Could he be part of the danger looming, or was he genuinely concerned? Mary's grip slackened, and I felt an invisible barrier slip between us, the bond forged in trust suddenly precarious. What do you mean? She asked, an anxious edge marking her voice. I think they're looking for you, Mary, he whispered, glancing around nervously. They're talking about more than just company politics. It's getting serious. The words hit me like a cold wave, drenching my hopeful ember in icy doubt. My instincts screamed to flee from this unexpected twist, but I remained rooted to the spot, absorbing every detail. What did this mean for Mary? And for me? Mary's face paled, her earlier warmth snuffed out by a sudden chill. What do you mean, serious? I can't say much, not here. Meet me later, somewhere safe, he urged, eyes darting around as if the shadows themselves were eavesdropping. My pulse quickened, anxiety cutting through the moment like a knife. There was no safety in these revelations, only greater uncertainty. The fragile connection I had found with Mary now felt dangerously exposed, the tether I had just begun to cling to now fraying at the edges. Tom, wait, I blurted, stepping forward, propelled by a mix of protective instinct and fear. What do you know about this? Who are they? I can't go on being in danger. I can't. Mary's eyes widened as she turned to me with an expression of pleading urgency. Please, just hear him out. We need to understand. But the more I listened, the more the suffocating weight of peril pressed down on us all, like an invisible hand wedged firmly against my throat. With every word Tom spoke, the fabric of my newfound hope unraveled further. Just when I thought things couldn't get worse, I felt the universe coil tighter around me, each revelation unraveling the trust one had slowly begun to weave, but in the midst of all this turmoil, I knew the truth of my heart knew that to seek safety meant I had to walk a treacherous line between concealment and vulnerability. A revelation lay just outside my grasp, hidden like a bruise beneath the surface. As Mary faced Tom, I felt the ghost of hesitation behind my eyes. Would there be any allies left in this twisted game? Could anyone be trusted? Just when I thought I might find my footing in the chaos, I remained not just a threat, but a potential target, and so did the fragile ties of connection that had started to form. As the shadows deepened and enveloped us, dread coiled tightly around my thoughts, whispering that the night could unveil truths far darker than I ever imagined. The sun hovered low on the horizon, casting long, distorted shadows across the park where we stood, and as Tom's revelation settled in the air like ominous clouds, I felt the ground shift beneath me. My world had already cracked under the weight of hidden fears and uncertainty, now it threatened to crumble all around me. "Tom, you don't understand," I started, desperate to reclaim some sense of control, but he cut me off with a shake of his head. "I know it sounds bad, but I believe there's still a way out," he insisted, his voice barely rising above a whisper. "If we keep our heads down and act wisely, we can navigate this." "I can't just wait and do nothing while they come for Mary," I argued, feeling the desperation clawing at my insides, desperation that was rapidly morphing into anger at the situation, at the faceless foes circling, and even at myself for letting this happen. Mary's eyes flickered from Tom to me, gauging the tension escalating like an electric charge. "We don't have a choice," she said, her voice soft yet firm. "We must think before we react. We can't afford any mistakes. What they want from me I won't let them take you too." Her words sank deep into my heart, echoing with an unsettling sense of foreboding. In all my worry for my safety, I had begun to overlook hers. This was no longer just about me. The stakes had risen. It felt like we were playing a game written by unseen hands that relished chaos and discord. "I don't want to hide in a corner while they plot," I said defiantly, catching the glint of resolve in Tom's eyes. "Tell me what you know." "No more beating around the bush." Tom shifted his weight nervously, glancing around, then leaned in closer to the two of us. "There's been talk of retaliation against employees." Hove challenged the upper management's shady dealings. "You've stirred the pot, and they don't like that." The fragments of my past surged through my mind, the ethical dilemmas, the moments when I had chosen integrity over convenience. "Then it's true. They've twisted the narrative. I'm under scrutiny now more than ever." Mary's hand slid into mine again, grounding me. "We can figure this out together. Whatever they're planning, they can't take away your voice. We need to find evidence, prove that they're the ones in the wrong." A glimmer of hope sparked against the overwhelming tide of dread. The possibility of turning the tables offered a sense of purpose, momentum to cling to when everything else felt lost. "And what about you, Mary? They're looking for you too." "We are not alone in this," Tom spoke with renewed conviction, the spark of camaraderie igniting a smoldering fire within me. "There are others, people willing to stand up and fight back. I can help you get in touch." But before I could voice my commitment to fighting back, the reality of the risk spiraled in my mind like a tempest. Would joining forces expose us to even greater peril? I felt torn between the desire for safety and the longing to reclaim my narrative. Mary's voice, soft yet resolute, disrupted my spiraling thoughts. "If there are allies who feel the same, we need to reach out. We have to expose their wrongdoings." "Let's meet tonight," I proposed suddenly, the words slipping out like a revelation anchored on the tide of desperation. "We could begin gathering information, figure out who's willing to join us. But we'll need to be careful." Tom nodded, the edges of a plan forming between us with each heartbeat. "I'll reach out to a couple of people I trust. This can work." "It has to." The shadows lengthened around us as we spoke, the veil of twilight cloaking our urgency. Yet, within that darkness, I sensed something stirring, an unyielding strength, a fragile sense of hope that might finally push through the smothering weight of fear. But as we embraced our fragile alliance, a new dread began to holler within me. What if our effort ran deeper than simple exposure? What consequence lay ahead if the truth were unveiled? With that gnawing thought left unresolved, a chill prickled across the nape of my neck. The evening air felt electric, crackling with potential but shadowed by uncertainty. Just as I steeled myself to confront the growing resolve, the bushes nearby rustled ominously that I turned my head sharply, dread sinking in. Out of the corner of my eye, I could see a figure partially obscured by the shadows, watching us intently. My heart raced as the realization struck I wasn't just being hunted, I might have just drawn attention to the very people I sought to defy. Get down. I yelled instinctively, adrenaline surging as I grabbed Mary and pulled her to the ground, the clutch of fear now a suffocating vice around my heart. Tom joined us, heart pounding, and confusion blurred the lines of our intentions. Life had thrown us into a maelstrom, and as my pulse thundered wildly through my veins, I realized we could be on the brink of a truth far more terrifying than I had ever anticipated. It was never just about my integrity, it was about survival, but survival at what cost? The realization hung heavily in the air as the figure drew closer, the realization that in unearthing the truth, we might find ourselves more entangled than we ever wished to be. I held my breath, wondering if the storm was only just beginning, and in that fleeting moment, it all crystallized. The lines between safety and danger had blurred irreparably, and I was more vulnerable than ever. As the figure stepped into the pale light of the park, I felt the weight of the gathering darkness pressing down. My eyes adjusted just enough to discern a familiar silhouette. It was Ethan, a colleague from work who had always possessed an unexpected kindness, an ally in a place that felt increasingly hostile. Yet, the unexpected twist of his presence here under these circumstances only magnified my anxiety. Ethan? I whispered, the instinct to reach for comfort clashing with the fear of exposure. Tom, still crouched low beside us, tensed at the name, his protective instincts flaring. Ethan raised his hands, palms outward, signaling surrender. It's me. I swear I'm not here to hurt you. His voice was steady, yet it carried an undercurrent of urgency. I was looking for you. Why were you following us? I blurted out, skepticism drenching my words. We were too exposed, too vulnerable to trust anyone, least of all someone who appeared like a shadow from my past. That I heard about the whispers at the office, he admitted, glancing around nervously as if the very shadows were listening. I didn't mean to scare you. I wanted to help. Ethan's sincerity flared through the air, yet doubt still hung like mist around us. Mary's grip on my hand tightened, and I felt her steady strength urging me to reassess the situation. Help us how? She asked, voice barely above a whisper but firm enough to cut through the tension. They're watching us. If you're here to betray us. No, he interrupted, shaking his head emphatically. I'm here to stand with you. I can provide information, and I can help you gather what you need. But you all need to be careful, it's worse than you think. That, my heart sank deeper. Worse than I thought. The gnawing uncertainty that had slithered its way into my mind began to tighten like a noose. What do you mean? I overheard a meeting last week, he said, his voice low and urgent. They've already started reaching out to others, people we used to trust. They want to make an example of anyone who steps out of line. Someone here doesn't just want to silence you, they want to ruin you. A shiver danced along my spine. Anxiety morphed into palpable dread. The fight for truth was fast becoming a battle for survival, and with each passing moment, I felt the ground beneath us shifting ominously. That I won't be intimidated, I asserted, but even as I said it, I felt my conviction wavering, the truth clawing at me, revealing the vulnerability buried deep. Hope felt so far away. I wanted to believe in the goodness of our efforts, yet every revelation seemed to push it further out of reach. Mary reached for Ethan. If you truly want to help, we need to know who we can trust. We can't risk more betrayals. That I can connect you with others, Ethan offered. There are people who feel the same way but are afraid to act. We just have to move quickly. Tom shifted uncomfortably, glancing at the trees that seemed to loom closer with each passing second. He had always been the cautious voice, but now he seemed lost in thoughts of decision-making. This could backfire. If we start reaching out to too many people, we might attract attention. The heaviness of his words seeped through the air like poison. What was supposed to be our fight for justice now felt muddled with calculations of safety and desperation. Yet, despite the fear, the flicker of humanity ignited. We would always choose the truth, even if it meant facing overwhelming odds, and just as the moment solidified, an unsettled rustling erupted in the brush behind us. The hairs on my neck stood on end. My body responded instinctively, pushing up to its feet. "We need to move. Now," I urged, glancing back at Tom and Mary, panic surging in my chest. "We're not safe here," urgency pulsed through the air as we began to retreat, skirting shadows while our breaths came fast and ragged. We threaded through the darkness, following Ethan's lead as he aimed for an exit, but the unease echoed in my mind like crashing waves. What if the risks we took backfired? What if stepping into the light only drew the wrong kind of attention? Guided through the maze of dim trails, I stole a glance at Mary, whose face mirrored the turmoil within me. We were bonded in fear, a connection formed under siege, and though I wanted to reassure her, the truth was I felt just as lost. And then we heard Ida snap of a twig, sharp and deliberate. I froze, heart racing as recognition jolted through me with a gut-wrenching intensity. It wasn't just the uncanny sound, it was the deep sense that we were being hunted. Someone knew we were here. "Go!" I shouted, scarcely realizing I had raised my voice until it sliced through the night. The urgency pushed us, my legs propelled as if guided by instinct rather than thought. But each step was laden with uncertainty, confusion gnawing at my resolve. In the chaos, everything seemed to blur. Hope flickered as we ran, but dread clawed at my conscience. I turned around, just for a moment, meeting Tom's harrowed gaze. He was my anchor, yet all I could see was the encroaching darkness behind us. A single thought surged forward, loud and clear: in our pursuit of truth, had we doomed ourselves before we even begun? With that, we burst out into the open street, breathless but momentarily free, just as the chilling thought echoed in my mind: who was out there waiting, and how much worse could things become? The street stretched before us, illuminated by distant streetlights casting a soft glow. It felt like a fragile sanctuary amidst the chaos we left behind, but with every step I took, the shadows seemed to loom larger. The echo of our hurried breaths filled the silence, punctuating the weight of unspoken fears. Ethan led the way, his back taut with tension, but I couldn't shake the pit in my stomach as uncertainty gnawed at me. What had we just stepped out of? The chaos of the park seemed to seep into the pavement, a reminder that the danger hadn't vanished just because Wet escaped for a moment. "Where are we going?" Tom asked, his voice laced with concern. "I know a place," Ethan replied, a flicker of hesitation playing across his face. "It's not far, but we need to keep moving." As we pressed onward, my mind raced through the implications of the revelations we'd exchanged. There were others in the office, people we thought we could trust, poised to betray us for the sake of their own safety. Would anyone stand with us as we refused to bow to the suffocating grip of fear? Or had we drawn a line that would only lead to isolation? The further we walked, the more I could feel the weight of my growing anxiety. Each footfall seemed to echo the silent question: what if we were wrong to trust Ethan? What if his offer of help was cloaked in deceit? The softer side of my heart, which once believed in goodness and change, began to tremble beneath the dread of betrayal. "Stop here," Ethan whispered suddenly, snapping me out of my swirling thoughts. We huddled close behind a crumbling wall, its bricks weathered and covered with ivy as if nature sought to reclaim it. "This used to be an old storage facility. No one comes here much anymore, and it has a back exit I think we can use to reach safer ground." I looked around, scanning for any signs of trouble amidst the shadows. The adrenaline that had propelled me only moments ago began to wane, leaving exhaustion in its wake. "What if someone's here?" I asked, my voice barely above a whisper. Ethan's eyes glanced up at the surrounding darkness, assessing. "Then we'll deal with it," he assured. There was a tremor in his voice that contradicted his bravado, and a sense of vulnerability slipped into my own heart as I sensed his fear mirrored my own. Suddenly, Mary interjected, her voice a soft tremor of resolve. "We need to figure out our next steps. This can't be the end. If the whispers at the office are getting louder, we can't afford to stay silent any longer." Tom's gaze flicked to her, and I could see the worry etched in his features. But what's the plan? We can't just rush what we don't know. Maybe we can start with the people Ethan mentioned, I offered, the suggestion sparking half-formed ideas in my mind. If they want to rise against everything that's happening, together we could create a voice strong enough to rival the silence they impose. Ethan nodded, his expression mingling with a newfound appreciation and fear. But we still must be cautious. Each step we take could lead us straight into a trap they're setting. A moment of silence lingered, thick with the weight of the choices before us. We were caught in a tangled web of fear and humanity, uncertain of how to untangle it. What seemed so simply called to action now felt monumental and fraught with peril. Then, a sudden commotion from the darkness snagged our attention. A few yards down, shadows shifted and converged, and I felt my heart plummet. "Do you see that?" I hissed, pointing toward the silhouettes emerging from the trees, their movements calculated and predatory. "They're here," Tom whispered, barely containing his rising panic. "Back away," Ethan urged, stepping closer, as if he could shield us with his own body, a brave but futile gesture. "Run!" I shouted, my instincts amplifying, fear propelling me forward, spurring the others into frantic motion as we darted through the small opening leading into the storage facility. Inside, darkness wrapped around us like a heavy cloak. I could hear the footsteps closing in behind. We were being hunted, and the reality of our situation hit with a bone-deep chill. "Where do we go?" I asked, breathless, barely keeping the tremor from my voice. The darkness swallowed my words and magnified the weight of dread. "That we need to find a way out," Ethan whispered, already scanning the dim room for any sign of hope, his resolve unwavering even as fear slithered through the air. But before we could move, a sharp sound shattered our hurried breaths, the unmistakable crack of a flashlight beam slicing through the darkness. "Stay quiet," Mary urged, barely suppressing her own rising fear as we huddled together, hearts racing. The beam swept across the floor, illuminating dust and debris, then locked onto our forms. I felt a cold sweat gather, visions of the confrontation playing through my mind like a nightmare. Then a familiar voice echoed through the shadows. "I knew I'd find you here," the figure said, stepping into the feeble light. The chill creeping up my spine turned to ice as recognition dawned, fear shifting into a frigid terror that gripped my heart. "Claire!" I gasped, my voice betraying the disbelief coiled within me. The face of a colleague I once trusted stared back, shifting time and again like a ghost from old memories. Her eyes glimmered with a mix of determination and something more sinister. "You really have no idea what you're up against, do you?" A question hung in the air, charged with perilous implications. As Claire stepped closer, hope slipped through my fingers like grains of sand. In that moment, I could almost hear the sweet whisper of betrayal coiling around us where trust faltered, and the reality of isolation clawed at my humanity even more fiercely than before. The shadows enveloped us, constricting as Claire's words slashed through the silence, her gaze penetrating as if she were peeling away the layers of pretense we had wrapped ourselves in. "You're in way over your heads," she warned, her voice dropping low, unsettling in its familiarity. "You think you can just walk away from all this, but it doesn't work like that. What do you mean?" I stuttered, my heart pounding as dread washed over me. It felt impossible to breathe, the very air thick with her accusations. The flashlight flickered slightly, casting disorienting shapes along cracked walls. Strange sounds echoed nearby, reminding us that danger lurked just beyond our makeshift barricade. Tom shifted uneasily, but I felt as though I was rooted to the spot, paralyzed by disbelief. "I mean," Claire continued, her expression hardening, "they're not just after those who know too much. They'll come for anyone who even looks like they might get involved. Do you know how many already ended up missing when all this began?" "Why are you telling us this?" Ethan asked, his voice steady but his eyes weaving between challenge and concern. "You're part of this mess too. You started this." The shadows deepened in Claire's gaze, but under that darkness, a flicker of something softer appeared. "I thought fighting meant strength, but here, in this fight, bravery is an illusion. They'll crush it. And I thought I could change things from within, but they know how to sniff out weakness." She glanced behind her, as if the mere mention of they could bring an unwelcome presence crashing through the door. Mary, ever the voice of reason, spoke up, her voice steadier than I felt. So you're just going to sit with the truth and do nothing? If you know something, help us. The taut silence stretched. Claire weighed our hope against her despair. I can't help you, she said softly, her facade cracking just enough to reveal a hint of vulnerability. If you're not careful, you won't just lose your jobs. You could lose your lives. Then you'll let us fall to their deception. I challenged, a defiance I didn't know I possessed igniting within. It was one thing to be afraid, but to let fear define us felt like surrendering our very souls. We can't continue to sweep these things under the rug. You have to make a choice, Claire. A cold wind seemed to rush through the room, dimming the flickering light and casting doubt across her features. What choice do I have left? She muttered, for a moment allowing sadness to seep into her bravado. I considered the flickers of resentment and regret within her. There was pain behind those eyes, perhaps even the reflection of a path she had yet to unwrite. Ethan stepped closer, trying to bridge the chasm between us. You said you were working to make a difference, Claire. If we band together, we can fight the very system that frightens you. We aren't powerless, we just need a plan. Claire scoffed, but I could see a crack forming in her stern facade. You really think they'll let you speak freely? That they won't hunt you like prey once you step outside the lines they've created? It doesn't matter. Better to stand and fight than to cower, Tom replied, his voice trembling yet resolute. He reached for Mary's hand, as if drawing strength from her presence. For a moment, we stood suspended in time, just beyond a precipice on one side, the terrible weight of her unyielding truth, and on the other, the flickering hope of unity. But before the thought could settle, the piercing sound of a distant siren reached our ears, rising in desperate urgency. Claire's eyes widened in terror, and she shook her head sharply. You need to leave. Now. Not without you, I insisted, each word feeling heavier than the last. You know more than you're saying. If we're to get out of here safely, we have to share everything. But she only turned away, the light revealing a face grotesquely vulnerable. You don't understand. I am not coming back from this. I've already taken too many steps into the darkness. Don't say that. I cried out, desperation clawing at my chest. You're not lost. You can come back with us, we can fight together. Claire's expression hardened, shifting back to the walls she had built. I can't, and you will only place yourselves in danger by trying, she whispered, voice trembling as she stepped backward, toward the shadows that lingered behind her. I reached for her in desperation, but a chilling colorlessness crept into her eyes, the flame of connection flickering dangerously low. As the sirens grew louder, she turned back toward the darkness, her words echoing hollowly. You won't get the chance to leave if you stay. My heart sank, panic rushing through me as Claire slipped deeper into the shadows. The sound of approaching footsteps vibrated through the space closer, drawing near, and I could feel the walls closing in. Ethan's hand gripped my arm, urgency radiating from his touch. We have to move. Now. Still, my mind raced, 1,000 thoughts colliding in the seconds that felt like hours. The darkness that sought to pull Claire from us held something sinister. She could have been our ally, a source of strength that could tip the scales, but as we rushed toward the exit, I cast one last glance back into the shadows, desperation clawing at me as I swallowed the lump in my throat. Everything felt fragile now, a single thread in a tapestry fraying at the seams, and just as we burst through the back door, a dreadful realization slammed into me. We were leaving behind more than a colleague who had abandoned a piece of ourselves that might never return. Outside, the world lay cloaked in uncertainty, but the echo of her warning lingered, wrapping around us like a tightening noose. As we sprinted down the alley, my heart raced not from fear alone, but from the dawning nightmare that perhaps our fight had only just begun, and the price of silence would be far steeper than we could have ever imagined. The night had turned hostile, the air thick with uncertainty as we dashed through the streets, hearts pounding in unison. Shadows flickered against the cold stone buildings, the distant wail of sirens growing ever closer. I glanced at Ethan, who was keeping up beside me, his face taut with worry. Did we just leave her behind? He asked breathlessly as we rounded a corner, seeking refuge beneath the looming silhouette of an abandoned storefront. His voice trembled with the weight of conflict that I struggled to process the reality of what we had decided. We had no choice. She wouldn't come with us, I replied, bitterness flooding my words. I had hoped Claire would see reason, that she would grasp at the lifeline we offered. Instead, she had chosen the shadows over light, the uncertainty over solidarity. Mary and Tom stood a few paces behind us, their breaths ragged, attempting to catch up with the turmoil unfolding inside our heads. But we can't just forget her, Mary said, her voice delicate but insistent. She's one of us, even if she doesn't believe it anymore. Silence descended momentarily as we all processed our shared loss. An empty ache gnawed at the pit of my stomach, and tears brimmed at the corners of my eyes, but I refused to let them fall. Maybe we can go back for her, I suggested, clinging to a thread of hope. We can try to convince her again. Tom shook his head. That's dangerous. We already almost got caught. We can't risk our lives for someone who's made her choice. The words slipped out harsher than expected. She's been hurt, that's why she's afraid, Tom. Ethan placed a reassuring hand on my shoulder, his warm touch grounding me. Listen, we'll find a way to get to Claire. But right now, we need to regroup and come up with a plan. We can't afford to be reckless. I nodded slowly, adjusting my thoughts like threads in a tapestry, trying to weave a path forward from the ruin of our recent encounter. Each heartbeat echoed the silent screams of doubt that enveloped us. As we crouched down in the shadows, the small flickering light of a nearby street lamp illuminated the bruised night around us. Mary dug into her backpack, pulling out the snacks we had thought to bring. Eat something. We need to think straight, she said, breaking the tension. As the faint whispers of our despair lingered, the act of sharing food felt unexpectedly grounding, a reminder that we were still breathing, still fighting. As we munched on stale granola bars, I looked at each of them, their faces a mix of fear and determination. In the weight of this shared burden, an unspoken bond was forming. Perhaps we could find strength in one another, igniting the flicker of hope within us once more. Hours passed, the night stretching almost unreal, and our resolve began to coalesce. Each of us took turns proposing ideas while the palpable tension simmered just beneath the surface. This battle went beyond Claire. It was about all of us, about making our voices heard against the silence that had threatened to consume us. Suddenly, Ethan paused, his eyes widening as if a thought had struck him like lightning. What if we release a statement? Something public that addresses what's happening. We can't just sit here and wait. Tom frowned, concern etching deep lines on his forehead. But that'll draw attention. You saw what they did to anyone who tried to speak out. What's worse, doing nothing and letting fear dictate our lives, or standing up and facing whatever comes our way? Ethan countered passionately, his words sparking a flicker of flame within us. The weight of his words settled in, a spirit of unity blossomed, igniting our hearts with newfound courage. It wouldn't be easy, and the fear of retribution loomed large. But the thought of taking a stand, of reclaiming our voices, felt like the first rays of dawn breaking over a dark horizon. Just as we huddled close, plotting our next move, a sudden noise shattered the fragile serenity. The familiar echo of footsteps reverberated down the alley. My heart raced at the thought of being discovered. They're here, I whispered. Adrenaline flooding my veins once more. We scrambled, ducking deeper into the shadows, dread coiling tightly within me. As the footsteps drew nearer, I had an unsettling feeling, a sense of being watched, but not just by our pursuers. Then, amidst the encroaching darkness, a familiar voice pierced through the panic, a voice I hadn't expected to hear. You thought you could just leave? I turned in shock. There, ethereal against the dim light, stood Claire, her expression a complex melange of defiance and something dangerously close to fear. You've put your lives in jeopardy, and there's only one way out. Remember what I said, they won't let you walk away. My breath caught in my throat as Claire raised her hand, revealing a small flash drive. This has everything. Names, details. It won't save you if they find you, Claire. I called, stepping forward. The risk of exposure hung heavy in the air, and I could feel my heartbeat quickening. What are you doing here? But before she could answer, an unsettling sound echoed the whirring of distant engines, ominous against the backdrop of the night. Claire's eyes widened in alarm. You need to trust me. Now, the realization hit me all at once. Whatever we had planned was now caught in a web far more sinister and entwined than I could ever have imagined. And as Claire's words sunk deeper into my consciousness, I felt the abyss of dread pull me in, wondering how far we were really willing to go in this fight for our lives and our integrity. The stakes had never been higher, and the shadows had just become so much darker. The night morphed around us, shifting from a canvas of darkness into a frantic whirlwind of uncertainty and desperation. Claire stood before us, the flickering light from her phone casting sharp shadows across her face, illuminating the conflict within her. I sensed her fear, palpable and raw, and for the first time, my heart intertwined with hers. She had reached across an invisible divide, the divide made thicker by the tangled web of betrayal and silence threatening to engulf us all. Trust you. I managed to whisper, every ounce of skepticism echoing through my throat. You left us behind only hours ago. Her gaze faltered, momentarily lost as the sound of approaching engines grew closer, the chilling hum threatening to swallow the thin thread of connection we had forged amidst chaos. I know. But that was before I realized how deep this runs, she replied forcefully, a tremor threading through her voice. I didn't want you to become collateral damage. But there's no more time for that. You're in this now, whether you like it or not. Tom shifted uneasily, his instincts flaring against the uncertainty. What do you have, Claire? You said it holds the truth, but how do we even know we can trust you now? I know it's a lot to ask, she confessed, desperation lacing her tone. But I'm not here to betray you. This has the names of people before me who tried to fight, it outlines the corruption we're up against. It's our best shot at saving ourselves. The weight of her words hung thick in the air, swirling among us like the stir of an impending storm. Claire's conflict ion mirrored my own dedication to integrity, now coupled with this spattering of doubt and peril. The thought of peeling back the layers of the facade surrounding us felt monumentally heavy, but amidst the tension, an ember lit within me, your ordinary soul wrapped in extraordinary circumstance. Maybe it's worth considering, I suggested, heart pounding. If she's right, we may not have many options left. Silence enveloped us, heavy with the urgency of my admission. I'll do it, I blurted out suddenly, each word punctuated by the echoes of uncertainty surrounding us. Their faces turned towards me, a mix of fear and fresh resolve igniting as the implications began to crystallize in the air. Yes. Claire's eyes glimmered with something that danced dangerously close to hope. We can stand together. I need your voices in this. And like a key turning in a lock, everything shifted. The web we had found ourselves entwined in, the shadows that leaned closer each moment, now became our armor. In the face of fear, hope sparked brightly, urging us forward. Then, as if the universe had conspired against us, the engines suddenly roared, headlights bombarded the narrow alley with cold, harsh light, illuminating our hidden sanctuary. Time's up, I whispered, dread pulsing through my veins, run. Claire shouted, and without hesitation, we propelled ourselves into the murky unknown, darkness swallowing us whole. My heart raced, thoughts spiraling as we dodged the illumination of impending doom, our collective breaths mingling in frantic urgency. The sound of footsteps thudded behind us, maniacal and relentless, and I turned back, spotting figures cast in shadowy hues, their intentions tangible and malicious. Keep moving. Tom urged, gripping my hand as we veered into an alley that felt limitless, and yet tightly claustrophobic. But clarity struck me, piercing through the chaos like a beacon. Just as we reached an intersection, I pulled us to a stop. Stop. This way. I urged, my heart pounding against my ribs. Claire, didn't you say there's a back exit? Yes. Claire confirmed breathlessly, a frisky determination igniting her expression. Through here. She pointed a narrow opening partially concealed by overgrown vines. Skirts of caution layered the air. We had to mold our desperation into something powerful, something capable of tearing the darkness apart. As we sprinted through the opening, the world exploded into heights of gravity. The faint echo of their steps still chased us, presence palpable as we navigated through the forgotten remnants of a city swallowed by time. But the shadows, our earlier fears, merged with every near miss, shadows now trailing us like ghosts of consciousness. I could feel each series of moments gripping deeper into my psyche as the reality of our plight engraved itself further into my being. Each corner unturned housed danger, the stakes heightened as fear morphed into raw anxiety. But beneath the apprehension, something profound began to bloom. "Where now?" Mary gasped, breathless, though the light in her eyes still glimmered. "Wait. I see something." Claire's gaze shifted, hope surging amid the fear as she approached an old rusted door standing ajar. "There's an old parking structure. We can regroup there." We flowed through the door, squeezing into the sanctuary of old concrete and shadow shades that felt less menacing, cloaked in the familiarity of shared breaths and rising unity. As we caught our breath, I turned to Claire. "Is this where we make our stand?" Claire nodded, the fire in her eyes now victorious. "This is where we gather what we need to fight back, to finally break the silence." And in that moment, the world slowed, my heart felt lighter. The tears that had begun to swell now flowed freely, not out of fear, but relief. It signaled acceptance, the powerful notion that we could rise from the ashes of our collective turmoil. Alongside each of them, we would confront the truth. Together, we fused unbroken threads of vulnerability with flames of camaraderie. Each of us bringing our own fragments of bravery, collectively becoming the tapestry that could stand against the tempest. Amidst the glow from the streetlights filtering in through the cracked windows, I felt something in me shift completely. The echoes of betrayal dulled against the rising roar of truth. We stood at the precipice, ready to fight. I turned to my allies, feeling the pull of our shared humanity. "Together," I declared firmly, my heart thudding like a war drum. "We can expose them. This time, we won't let our voices be silenced." The resolve thickened among us, igniting a deep-rooted willingness to confront whatever shadows awaited. As we convened, I felt faith rise amidst despair. A chance of redemption clung to us, like the cool night air that mingled with the gathering warmth of our united spirits. And in that moment of preparation, the emotional whirlwind guided me toward the truth that I had missed, the realization that sometimes, in confronting the darkest storms, we discover the brightest shards of hope. Maybe in choosing integrity over silence, we had found the greatest strength of all. The truth isn't just something we uncover, it's a war cry, a reminder that together, we can rise from the shadows. As our voices melded into one amidst the concrete mausoleum, the light radiating above us felt electric and alive, each heartbeat pulsed fiercely with promise, lighting the path before us. It was not just about safety, we're becoming the change, and this journey toward truth became the very essence of our humanity. And it was then, on the threshold of a new beginning, with tangled hearts and lives forever changed, that I realized the persecution we faced would only embolden us. With steady resolve, we stood ready to transform from the hunted into hunters, wielding the light of resilience against the engulfing abyss. When we finally stepped outside, the air felt charged, the weight of all we carried gone, the echoes of our past offering a symphony of perseverance rather than despair. Because together, we were no longer just survivors, we were warriors of truth, ready to confront the battle that awaited. As dawn began to unfold, painting the skies with victorious hues, I felt a deep-seated belief swell within me. And in that moment, I whispered to the dawn, to the new day before us, in our fight for truth, we have finally found one another.